The click of heels echoed through the empty international airport terminal like tiny hammers striking the cold floor. She walked quickly, pulling a designer leather suitcase that cost more than many people earned in a year. But her eyes didn't reflect haste. They reflected escape. The artificial light of the LED fixtures cast sharp shadows under her eyes, and even with her impeccable makeup, there was a heavy look on her face. Something no imported cream could hide. She took a deep breath, trying to organize her thoughts, but each inhalation brought back the voice on the phone, repeating those words. That still resonated. Your mother fell. You need to come. Before we dive into this story, leave your comment with a rating of 1 to 10, and tell us what city you're joining us from. May this moment bring reflection and emotion to your heart. The call had come in the middle of the night, while she was reviewing contracts in her glass and steel penthouse in the heart of a city that never slept. The receptionist at Maplewood Senior Care sounded tired but polite, choosing each word with the care of someone who knows they are about to disrupt the routine of an important person. Nothing serious, she said, but the pause that followed revealed there was more than what was being said. But it would be good for you to come. She asked for you. She, her mother. Eleanor Vance, the 87-year-old woman who was once everything and who had slowly transformed into a distant responsibility, managed by monthly bank transfers and spaced-out phone calls that never lasted more than 5 minutes. Sarah Jenkins knew her mother was there, in the upscale assisted living facility she herself had chosen, with 24-hour nurses, well-maintained gardens, and cable TV in every room. She paid handsomely for it. She thought that was enough. Now, descending the escalators towards the airport exit, she felt the weight of a truth that had been forming for years, but which she had always swept under the rug. Money doesn't buy presents, and presence was exactly what she had never given. The executive car service driver waited for her with a discreet sign. She got into the back seat without a word, just a nod. As the car glided through the wide avenues of the city where she was born, she observed the changes. New high-rises, where houses once stood. Shopping malls where there used to be parks. Everything seemed bigger, faster, more impersonal. But there were also things that resisted. The local bakery, where her mother bought bread every day, the small community park where she played as a child, the crooked lamppost that was never fixed. Each memory came with an uncomfortable pang in her chest. The car turned left, entering a quieter, tree-lined street where Maplewood Senior Care was located. It was a beautiful place, she had to admit. White facade, well-manicured gardens, automatic gate. Nothing like the old nursing homes with the smell of medicine and dark hallways. This place looked more like a hotel for seniors, but as she crossed the gate, she felt a tightness in her chest. No matter how sophisticated it was still a place where people sent those they no longer wanted nearby. The receptionist recognized her immediately. After all, Sarah was famous. Her face graced magazine covers, television interviews, advertising billboards. She was a successful woman, admired by millions, envied by many. But here, in that silent lobby with the scent of lavender and gleaming floors, none of that mattered. She was just a daughter who had taken too long to return. "Mrs. Vance is in her room," the receptionist said, with a gentle smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Third floor, room 23. Nurse Brenda is with her." Sarah thanked her with a nod and headed for the elevator. The doors closed slowly, and for an instant she saw her own reflection in the polished metal. She was impeccable. Hair pulled back in an elegant bun, tailored suit, designer handbag. But her eyes told another story. They were tired, frightened, guilty. The third-floor hallway was silent as a church. She passed numbered doors, hearing here and there the muffled sound of a television, a dry cough, the creak of a wheelchair. Each step seemed heavier than the last. When she reached room 23, she stopped. The door was ajar. She took a deep breath, 3 times. Then she pushed the door open slowly. The room's light was soft, almost golden, coming from a bedside lamp. Her mother lay there, too small for the bed, covered up to her chest with an immaculate white sheet. Her hair, completely white, was carefully combed, and her hands, thin and marked by dark spots, rested on the blanket. Nurse Brenda, a middle-aged woman with a tired but gentle expression, stood up when she saw Sarah enter. "Good afternoon," Brenda said in a low voice. "She's sleeping now, but she was awake a little while ago. She asked for you." Sarah merely nodded, unable to speak. Brenda noticed, gave a compassionate smile, and left the room, closing the door carefully. Finally, they were alone. She approached the bed slowly, as if afraid to wake her mother. Or perhaps afraid that her mother would wake up and recognize her. She sat in the chair beside the bed and, for the first time in years, truly looked at the woman who had given her life. Eleanor was so small. When did that happen? When did that strong woman who worked all day, who carried heavy bags from the grocery store, who cooked, cleaned, sewed, and still found the energy to read stories before bed, become this fragile, silent figure? The answer came quickly and painfully, while she was away, building her empire. Sarah's eyes began to sting. She blinked, trying to hold back the tears, but one escaped anyway, leaving a warm trail on her cheek. She wiped it away quickly with the back of her hand, as if someone might see her. It was then that she noticed the bedside table. There were a few objects there: a glass of water, a small bottle of medicine, a carefully folded handkerchief, and a photograph in a simple wooden frame. She picked up the frame with both hands, and her heart almost stopped. It was an old photo, taken when she was about 7 years old. She was on her mother's lap, laughing, her hands dirty with soil because they had spent the afternoon planting flowers in the backyard. Her mother smiled too, looking at her with such evident pride that it transcended time. Behind them, the simple house where they lived, with cracked walls and a clothesline full of laundry drying in the sun. She remembered that day. It was her mother's birthday, but they didn't have money for a party. So she decided the gift would be a garden. She picked up seeds she found on the street, and the two spent hours digging, planting, watering. Her mother laughed so much. She said it was the best gift she had ever received. How many years had it been since she last thought about that? She put the frame back in place, but her hands were trembling. She looked around the room, trying to understand who this woman was now. The closet was closed, but there was a hanger on the door with a light blue bathrobe. On the wall, a calendar from the previous year, still marking December. No decorations beyond the photograph, no trace of luxury, despite all the money she deposited monthly. Her mother stirred, a low sigh, followed by a slight movement of her head. Sarah froze, holding her breath. Eleanor's eyes opened, slowly blinking against the light. For a few seconds they seemed lost, searching for something on the ceiling. Then, slowly, they turned sideways and found her. There was a long silence. Her mother looked at her without a defined expression, as if trying to understand if this was real or just another dream. Sarah didn't know what to say. All the words she had prepared on the plane, all the excuses, all the justifications, evaporated. Then her mother smiled, a small, weak, but genuine smile. "You came," she whispered, her voice hoarse from spending too much time in silence. Sarah felt something break inside her chest. She leaned forward, taking her mother's thin, cold hand in hers. "I came, Mom. I came." And in that instant, she began to understand the weight of what she had done, of what she had failed to do, of the choices that had brought her here, before this woman who had never stopped loving her, even when she herself had forgotten how to love back. Chapter 2. The following days dragged on with a slowness Sarah no longer knew. Accustomed to the frantic pace of meetings, travel, and decisions that couldn't wait, she now found herself trapped in a routine of small gestures and long silences. She woke up early at the hotel near Maplewood Senior Care, drank coffee that tasted like nothing, and walked the 3 blocks to the White Gate, always under the curious gaze of neighbors who recognized her from magazines but dared not approach. Room 23 became her new office, her new universe. There, sitting in that padded plastic chair, she spent hours observing her mother. Sometimes Eleanor slept, her breathing slow and rhythmic. Other times she was awake, staring at the ceiling or out the window, not saying much. Sarah tried to strike up a conversation, but the words always seemed inadequate, too small to fill the abyss of years between them. It was Brenda who began to tell the stories. "You know, your mother is one of the most beloved residents here," the nurse said one afternoon as she adjusted the IV drip. "Everyone likes her. She never complains about anything, always has a smile even when she's in pain." Sarah felt a pang. Is she in a lot of pain? "She has better days and worse days, but she doesn't like to talk about it, says she doesn't want to bother anyone." Brenda paused as if weighing her words. "You know, some people here spend all day ringing the call button, asking for this and that, complaining about the food, the temperature, everything. Mrs. Vance doesn't. She only calls when it's truly necessary." "She was always like that," Sarah murmured, more to herself than to Brenda. "Yes, I can see that." The nurse finished adjusting the IV and looked at her. "Can I tell you something?" Sarah nodded. "When you had that big screen television installed in her room, remember?" Brenda pointed to the modern TV fixed to the wall. "She thanked you, but she never turned it on, not once. We offered, but she always said it was fine as it was, that she preferred the silence." Something cold ran down Sarah's spine. "Why?" Brenda shrugged. "I think she preferred to be with her own thoughts." After the nurse left, Sarah stared at the expensive television, still with the protective plastic on one edge. How many thousands of dollars thrown at something her mother didn't even want? How many other things had she sent, thinking she was doing enough, without ever asking what her mother truly needed? That night, before leaving, she asked permission to look in the closet. She wanted to better understand how her mother lived there, what clothes she wore, what objects she kept. Brenda said it was fine, that family could access belongings whenever they wished. She opened the closet doors slowly, almost afraid of what she would find. There were few clothes, 3 simple dresses, 2 blouses, a pair of sweatpants, a thin jacket, everything old but clean and well-maintained. At the back of the closet, a few stacked shoeboxes. She pulled out the first one. Inside she found old documents, her own birth certificate, school records, a yellowed vaccination card. Her mother had kept everything. In the second box, photographs, dozens of them, most in black and white, showing the simple life they led. Her young mother, pregnant, smiling at the camera. Her as a baby in Eleanor's arms. The 2 of them in the small park, in the backyard, at the school gate. Each photo was a fragment of a story that Sarah had, somehow, forgotten. But it was in the 3rd box that she found something that made her stop. A notebook, small with a faded blue hardcover, its spine worn by time. She opened it carefully, and on the very first page she recognized her mother's handwriting. A shaky, somewhat crooked script of someone who never had formal education but learned to write on her own with effort. The first entries were from years ago, shortly after Eleanor was moved to the facility. March 15th. I arrived here today. The room is nice. Even has a private bathroom. She chose well. I know she's busy. She was always determined. It will work out. Sarah felt a knot in her throat. She continued reading. March 22nd, the food is good. I don't eat everything because it's a lot, but I don't want to waste it. There's an old lady in the next room who cries every night. I went to talk to her today. I think she felt better. April 10th, she called today. It was quick, but her voice was tired. She must be working too much. She always worked too much. May 3rd, it's been a long time since she came, but I know she has her own life. That's how it is. Children grow up and fly away. It's nature. The pages continued, months turning into years, and with each entry, Sarah felt the weight increase. There was no anger in those words, no accusation, only a painful acceptance, a silent resignation that cut deeper than any shout. December 12th, Christmas is coming. She said she can't come, that she has an important trip. I understand. Her work is important. December 25th, I spent Christmas here. The staff was very kind. They had a dinner. There was even turkey. But I kept thinking about how she was. Did she eat well? Was she alone too? Sarah had to close the notebook. Her hands trembled so much that she almost dropped it. She leaned against the wall, trying to breathe, but the air wouldn't reach her lungs properly. She looked at her mother, who slept peacefully, oblivious to the emotional storm happening just a few feet away. How had she not noticed? How had she not seen that her mother was there, waiting, while she accumulated achievements that now seemed so empty? She opened the notebook again, this time to the most recent pages. August 14th. My leg hurts more, but I won't say anything. She already has too many worries. It's always been like this. And carrying the world on her shoulders. September 2nd, I saw her on television today. She looked beautiful. I always knew she'd go far. I'm proud. Even from afar, I'm proud. October 19th, I fell today. It was silly. I tripped on the rug. The girls helped me. They said they were going to call her. I asked them not to call, but they said it was important. I hope it didn't disrupt anything important. The last sentence had been written 3 days ago. 3 days before the call that brought her back. Sarah closed the notebook and held it against her chest, as if she could absorb all the pain those words carried. She stood there still, feeling the weight of each entry, of each silent weight, of each justification her mother had created for her absence. When she finally managed to move, she put the notebook back in the box, but she knew she would never forget what she had read. Those pages had revealed a truth she always suspected, but never wanted to face. Her mother never stopped loving her, never stopped waiting, never stopped understanding, and that somehow hurt even more. She left Maplewood Senior Care that night walking slowly, as if carrying an invisible weight on her back. The cold night air hit her face, but she barely felt it. Her legs carried her to a nearby park, the same one where she played as a child. She sat on one of the rusty benches and looked up at the sky, where few stars managed to shine through the city's light pollution. She thought about all the times she told herself she was doing the best for her mother, that the facility was comfortable, that she had medical assistance, that she lacked nothing. She thought about all the expensive gifts she sent, the generous transfers, the quick calls where she said everything was fine, but she never asked what her mother truly wanted, never asked if she felt alone, never asked if just being there, present, would be enough. An elderly couple passed through the park, holding hands, laughing at something only they knew. She watched them until they disappeared around the corner and felt a strange envy. Envy of something simple, something money had never bought her, true companionship. She returned to the hotel, determined to change. She didn't know how yet. She didn't know if it was too late, but she knew she needed to try. She needed to give her mother what she had never given: time, presence, true attention. The next day she arrived at Maplewood Senior Care earlier. She found her mother awake, looking out the window. She approached and, without saying anything, took her hand. Eleanor turned and smiled, that small, tired smile, but full of a tenderness that spanned decades of distance. "Good morning, Mom." "Good morning, dear." They stayed like that, in silence, just holding each other's hands, and in that instant, without grand declarations or requests for forgiveness, something began to rebuild, slowly, fragile, but real. Chapter 3. The weeks began to shape a routine Sarah never imagined living. She cancelled meetings, postponed contracts, ignored urgent emails. Her team, accustomed to seeing her always available, always in charge, now received short, distant replies. Some tried to understand, others questioned, but she no longer cared. For the first time in years, something was more important than her empire. Every morning she walked to Maplewood Senior Care with coffee and a pastry in a bag, something her mother liked but rarely asked for. She would arrive at room 23 and find Eleanor already awake, sometimes sitting in the chair by the window, other times still in bed, staring into space with that expression that mixed weariness and serenity. They talked, or tried to. In the beginning, the dialogues were broken, uncomfortable, full of long pauses that neither knew how to fill. Sarah asked about the facility, about her health, about the food. Her mother replied in monosyllables, always with the same gentle tone, always minimizing any discomfort. It seemed neither knew how to relate anymore, as if time had erased the language they once shared. But gradually, something began to change. One afternoon, while helping her mother get ready for lunch, Sarah noticed an old scar on Eleanor's arm, a thin but deep mark crossing her forearm. "This, Mom, how did that happen?" Eleanor looked at her own skin, as if seeing the scar for the first time in years. "Oh, that. It was a long time ago. You were still little." "Tell me." Her mother hesitated, but then sighed, as if deciding it wouldn't hurt to reminisce. "You were about 5. It was winter, and we didn't have much to eat that week. I had gotten a job ironing clothes for a lady in the neighborhood, but the iron was old, one of those heavy ones you heat on the stove. I was in a hurry, trying to finish quickly so I could pick you up from school, and I ended up touching my arm on the hot part." Sarah felt her stomach clench. "Did you go to the doctor?" "Doctor?" Eleanor chuckled, a low, humorless laugh. "We didn't even have money for medicine, let alone a doctor. I put toothpaste on it and left it at that. It stung for a few days, but then it passed. Mom, it was nothing much, dear. That's just how it was. We managed as best we could." Eleanor touched the scar with her fingertips, almost tenderly. "The important thing is that you never went hungry. I always ate less so you could eat more, but you never knew that, and that's exactly how I wanted it." The words fell like stones on Sarah's chest. She knew her childhood had been difficult, that her mother worked hard, but she had never fully grasped the extent of the sacrifices. She had never asked, she had never wanted to know, perhaps, afraid of discovering something that would make her feel indebted. And now, decades later, the debt was revealed to be too immense to be repaid. "Why did you never tell me these things?" Sarah asked, her voice almost fading. "Why? You were a child. A child should be a child, not carry an adult's burdens." Eleanor turned her face to the window, where the afternoon light cast soft shadows on the walls. "I did what I had to do. Any mother would." But it wasn't true. And they both knew it. Not every mother would. Not every mother could endure. Eleanor had made impossible choices, had carried invisible worlds, all so that her daughter would have a chance to be more, to go further, to not repeat the same story of poverty and struggle. And Sarah had gone far, very far, so far that she forgot to look back. That night, returning to the hotel, she opened her laptop for the first time in days. She had hundreds of unread emails, notifications from all social networks, messages from business partners. She scrolled mechanically, but none of it seemed real. They were just words on a screen, pleas for attention from A world that didn't truly know her. She closed the laptop without replying to anything. In the following days, other stories emerged. Brenda, always so observant, began to share small details she had noticed over the years. "You know those blankets you sent every winter?" she said one morning while changing the sheets. "Mrs. Vance never used any of them. She always donated them to other residents who had less." Sarah, who was sitting in the chair near the window, turned quickly. "What do you mean?" "Yes. She said she had enough blankets, that she didn't need any more. But the truth is, she liked to help others. There's a lady in room 15, Mrs. Anderson, who has no family, no one visits, no one sends anything. Mrs. Vance always gave the things she received to her." "I didn't know." "Well, there you go. Your mother is one of those people who don't make a fuss. They do things quietly without expecting recognition." Brenda smoothed the sheet carefully, thoughtfully. "Some people live complaining, demanding attention all the time. Mrs. Vance doesn't. She's grateful for everything, even when she has no reason to be." That was another silent stab. Sarah realized that even from afar, even without noticing, her mother remained who she always was, generous, discreet, putting others before herself. Meanwhile, she herself had become the opposite, loud, demanding, always needing to be seen, always needing to prove her worth. When Brenda left, Sarah sat looking at her mother, who was napping peacefully, her breathing slow and soft. She approached the bed and for the first time in decades did something she hadn't done since childhood. She kissed Eleanor's forehead. The skin was cool but soft. It smelled of neutral soap and thyme. "I'm sorry, Mom," she whispered so softly that even she wasn't sure if she had said it aloud or just thought it. The days continued to pass, and with them more revelations. She discovered that her mother refused additional treatments she herself offered to pay for, saying she didn't want to waste money needlessly. She discovered that Eleanor woke up early every day, even without reason, because that was how she had always lived, working from dawn. She discovered that she kept all the letters Sarah sent, even the shortest and most impersonal ones, in a shoebox at the back of the closet. Each discovery was another layer of guilt, but also of understanding. One afternoon, while helping her mother walk down the hallway of Maplewood Senior Care, they met Mrs. Anderson, the lady from room 15 Brenda had mentioned. She was a thin woman with sad eyes, who walked slowly with the help of a cane. When she saw Eleanor, her face lit up. "Mrs. Vance, so good to see you walking." Her mother smiled, in that gentle way that was uniquely hers. "Hi, Irene, how are you?" "Oh, I'm getting by. You know how it is." Mrs. Anderson looked at Sarah with curiosity. "Is this your daughter, the one you talk about so much?" Eleanor nodded, and Sarah felt something strange in her chest. Her mother talked about her? "Yes, it is. She came to visit me." "What a blessing, my dear. What a blessing." Mrs. Anderson held Sarah's hand with surprising strength. "Your mother is an angel. She helped me so much since I arrived here. I don't know what I would do without her." "Oh, Irene, stop it," Eleanor said, almost embarrassed. "It's true. When I arrived, I was so lost, so sad. Mrs. Vance came to my room every day, kept me company, told me stories, and she always brought me something, a sweet, a fruit, a pretty handkerchief." Mrs. Anderson looked at Sarah with teary eyes. "Your mother has a huge heart. You are so lucky." Sarah could only nod, unable to speak. Mrs. Anderson said goodbye and continued down the hallway, leaving mother and daughter alone again. "Mum, do you do this for a lot of people here?" Eleanor shrugged. "I do what I can. There are a lot of lonely people here. I at least have you, even if from afar. Some people have no one." Sarah had to stop walking. She felt her legs weaken, and she had to lean against the wall. Eleanor, noticing, held her arm with a strength that didn't seem possible for someone so fragile. "Are you okay, dear?" "I am, Mom. I am." But it was a lie. She wasn't okay. She was completely shattered inside, realizing that the woman she had abandoned was infinitely better than she would ever be. That while she accumulated awards and contracts, her mother accumulated small, silent gestures that made a real difference in people's lives. That night, lying in the hotel bed, Sarah cried for the first time in years, not a contained, discreet cry, but a deep, painful cry that came from a place she didn't know existed within her. She cried for everything she lost, for everything she let die, for all the times she chose work over presents, for all the calls she cut short, for all the Christmases she spent away, for all the excuses she created to justify the distance. She cried until there were no more tears, until her body ached from contracting so much. And when she finally managed to stop, she felt something strange, a relief, as if, by acknowledging the pain, she had taken the first step to begin healing it. She still didn't know if she would be able to fix what she broke. She still didn't know if her mother could forgive her, or if she herself could forgive herself. But she knew she had to try. She needed to be there, present, real, for whatever time remained, because time was the only thing that couldn't be bought, and it was exactly what she had given the least of. Chapter 4. Dawn arrived, bringing a fine rain that left everything grey outside. Sarah woke, up earlier than usual, with the feeling that something had changed during the night. It wasn't anything concrete, just a perception that by recognizing her pain, she had crossed a door that could no longer be closed. She took a long shower, letting the warm water wash not only her body, but also part of the weight she carried. She dressed in simple clothes, without her usual calculated elegance, and went down for the hotel breakfast. She ate slowly, watching the rain outside the window, seeing people hurry past under colourful umbrellas. When she arrived at Maplewood Senior Care, she was drenched. She hadn't brought an umbrella, and the 3-block distance was enough to completely soak her hair and clothes. The receptionist looked at her with surprise, but said nothing, just offered a towel that Sarah accepted with a tired smile. She went up to the 3rd floor, dripping water along the way, leaving a dark trail on the beige carpet. As she entered room 23, she found her mother awake, looking out the window, watching the rain fall. "You're all wet, dear," Eleanor said, turning with a worried expression. "I forgot my umbrella." "You'll catch a cold like that." "I'm fine, Mom." Eleanor made a disapproving gesture with her head, the way she used to when Sarah was little and came home from outside with a scraped knee or dirty clothes. It was a gesture that spanned decades, intact, carrying with it a memory of care that Sarah didn't know she had kept. She sat in the chair beside the bed, still holding the towel, and stayed there, just watching. Her mother returned to looking out the window, and for a long moment, neither of them said anything. The silence was filled only by the sound of rain hitting, the glass and the distant tick-tock of a wall clock in the hallway. Then her mother spoke, in a low, distant voice, as if talking more to herself than to her daughter. "When you were little, you loved playing in the rain." Sarah turned her face, surprised. "I did? You loved it. There was no way to keep you inside. As soon as it started to rain, you wanted to go out, jump in puddles, get all wet." Eleanor smiled, a small nostalgic smile. "I'd get mad, because then you'd get sick, and we didn't have money for medicine. But you were so happy in those moments. You laughed so much." Sarah tried to remember, but the memory was blurred, distant. So many things she had forgotten, so many moments that her mother kept alive inside her while she herself had let them die. "Do you remember the day the rain flooded the backyard?" Eleanor continued, her eyes still fixed on the window. "You were about 6. The water rose so high it was almost to your knees. I was desperate, trying to save the plants, the clothes that were on the line, and you were jumping in the... Water, laughing, saying it looked like a swimming pool. Sarah felt something stir inside her chest. A vague, almost translucent image began to form in her mind. The flooded backyard, her mother running back and forth, and she, small, happy, completely oblivious to the worry that surrounded everything. "I remember that," she said softly. "You do? I thought you'd forgotten." "I had forgotten, but now I remember." Eleanor finally turned and looked at her daughter. There was something different in her gaze, a softness, a door opening. "You were always stubborn, ever since you were tiny. When you wanted something, there was no force in the world that could make you give up." Her mother chuckled again, more openly this time. "I remember when you decided you were going to learn to ride a bike. We didn't even have a bike, but you didn't care. You kept asking, until I managed to borrow one from the neighbor. It was old, rusty, but you didn't care. You got on that bike and fell about 20 times the first day, skinned your knees, your elbows, but you didn't cry. You'd get up and try again. You were afraid I'd get hurt." I was, but I was also proud, because I knew that with all that stubbornness you'd go far. Eleanor extended her hand, and Sarah took it, feeling the cool, thin skin between her fingers. "And you did. You went so far." Her mother's voice trailed off at the end, and Sarah realized there were tears in Eleanor's eyes. Not tears of sadness, but of something more complex. Pride mixed with longing, love mixed with acceptance. "I just wanted you to be happy," her mother continued, squeezing Sarah's hand tighter. "No matter where you were, what you did, I just wanted you to be happy." "I thought I was happy, Mom. I thought everything I achieved, everything I built, was happiness. But now—" Sarah's voice trembled, and she had to pause to breathe. "Now I realize it wasn't. It was just noise, a lot of noise to hide the emptiness." Eleanor let go of Sarah's hand and touched her face with a delicacy that made time stop. It was such a simple, common gesture, yet laden with decades of unspoken love, unasked forgiveness, understanding that went beyond words. "You don't have to be perfect, dear. You never did." That broke something inside Sarah. The tears came fast, hot, uncontrollable. She leaned forward, resting her head on her mother's shoulder, and cried like she hadn't cried since childhood. And Eleanor, even fragile, even tired, held her. She ran her hand through Sarah's wet hair, stroking slowly and repeatedly, the way she used to when Sarah had nightmares and woke up frightened in the middle of the night. They stayed like that for a time that couldn't be measured. The rain continued outside, the world kept turning, but inside that room nothing else mattered. It was just a mother and a daughter, finally finding each other after years lost from one another. When Sarah finally pulled away, she wiped her face with the back of her hand and tried to smile. "I'm sorry, Mom. I'm sorry for everything." "There's nothing to be sorry for, dear. You lived your life. That's what I wanted. But I abandoned you. You didn't abandon me. You just followed your path." Eleanor sighed, tired but serene. "I always knew you'd leave one day. Mothers know that. We raise our children to be free, not to be tied to us. But I should have come back, should have called more, should have. Eleanor shook her head gently. "Life isn't made of shoulds, dear. It's made of choices. You made yours, I made mine, and it's all right." "How can it be all right?" Sarah's voice came out louder than she intended. "How can it be all right if I left you alone, if I put you here and only came back when I thought it was too late?" Eleanor was silent for a moment, thoughtful. Then she looked directly into Sarah's eyes, with a clarity that pierced through any defense. "Because I love you, and real love doesn't hold grudges. It doesn't count the days that passed. It doesn't measure distance." She touched her chest, over her heart. "True love is right here. It always has been, and nothing that happened changed that." The words fell like a balm on wounds Sarah didn't even know she had. She wanted to argue, wanted to say it wasn't fair, that her mother deserved more. But at the same time she understood. She understood that Eleanor had made peace with life in a way she herself hadn't yet achieved. They spent the rest of the morning in silence, just sitting side by side, listening to the rain. Occasionally her mother would comment on the weather, on the plants in the garden below that must be happy with the water. Sarah just listened, absorbing every word, every gesture, every breath. When Brenda came in to bring lunch, she looked at the two of them and smiled but said nothing. She just left the tray and left, closing the door carefully. Sarah helped her mother eat, cutting the chicken pieces, blowing on the soup to cool it. These were simple gestures, but each carried a new meaning. It was no longer about obligation or guilt. It was about being there, present, real. After lunch, Eleanor felt sleepy. Sarah helped her lie down, arranged the pillows, pulled the blanket up to her chin. Her mother closed her eyes, but before falling asleep, held Sarah's hand one last time. "Stay a little longer?" "I'm not leaving, Mum. Not anymore." Eleanor smiled, still with her eyes closed, and in a few minutes she was asleep. Sarah stayed there, holding her mother's hand, watching her slow, peaceful breathing. She looked around the room, seeing all the small details that had previously gone unnoticed. The thin crack in the wall, the pattern of the flowers on the wallpaper, the damp stain in the corner of the ceiling. All of it was part of her mother's life now, and she hadn't been present for any of it. But she was now, and maybe, just maybe, there was still time to build something new, something true, something that wasn't based on money or expensive gifts, but just on presence, on love, on being there. The rain began to subside outside, and shy rays of sun began to appear through the clouds. Sarah looked out the window, and for the first time in a long time, felt something she no longer knew existed within her. Hope. Chapter 5. The following weeks brought changes no one expected, especially Sarah herself. She, who had always been synonymous with movement, urgency, being in 5 places at once, now found herself completely immersed in a simple, slow routine. She woke up early, had coffee without rushing, walked to Maplewood Senior Care, observing details that had previously gone unnoticed, the smell of bread from the bakery, the neighbor's dog barking, the way the morning light hit the trees. She started having lunch with her mother every day, sometimes in the room, other times in the communal dining hall, where she met other residents and heard their stories. Mrs. Anderson always greeted her with a smile. Mr. Davis, from room 18, told old jokes that made Eleanor laugh. Mrs. Miller, in a wheelchair, complained about the food, but always asked for seconds of dessert. Each person there had a lifetime behind them, full of stories no one else asked about. Sarah began to see the facility differently. It wasn't just an assisted living facility. It was a place where people waited. They waited for visits that didn't come. They waited for phone calls that didn't ring. They waited, mostly, to be remembered that they still mattered. One afternoon, while helping her mother walk through the garden, they found Mr. Davis sitting alone on a bench, staring into space. "Good afternoon, Mr. Davis," Eleanor said, always kind. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Vance." He looked at the two of them with a sad smile. "Today's my daughter's birthday. It's been 3 years since she came to see me." The sentence fell like a stone. Sarah felt her stomach clench, but it was Eleanor who spoke, with that silent wisdom only those who have lived a lot possess. "She must be busy, Mr. Davis. Life is like that sometimes." "It is. Life is like that," he sighed, rubbing his hands on his knees. "But we never stop waiting, do we?" They continued their walk in silence, but that sentence echoed in Sarah's head for the rest of the day. We never stop waiting. How many fathers, how many mothers were scattered around the world, waiting for children who didn't come, waiting for a call, a visit, a sign that they were still remembered. That night, alone in the hotel, Sarah made a decision. She opened her laptop and began to write, not a contract, not a business email, but a text. Words that came from a place she hadn't accessed in a long time. She wrote about regret, about distance, about how easy it is to justify absence with work, with obligations, with life that never stops. She wrote until her hands ached, until her eyes stung, until she had nothing more to say. Then she saved the file, but didn't send it to anyone. It was just for her. A record, a way to get out everything that was suffocating her inside. Back at Maplewood Senior Care the next day, she found her mother more animated. Brenda commented that Eleanor had slept well, that she had eaten all her breakfast, that she had even walked down the hallway by herself, leaning on her walker. "She's improving," the nurse said with a genuine smile. "I think your presence is doing her good." Sarah felt a strange warmth in her chest. It wasn't pride. It was something deeper. It was the feeling of finally doing something that truly mattered. She spent the afternoon helping her mother organize the closet. They sorted old clothes, put away unused items, changed sheets. These were simple domestic tasks, the kind Sarah had never done in her adult life. She always had someone else do them for her. But there, folding clothes with her mother beside her, she felt a connection no business meeting had ever provided. "You know, dear," Eleanor said, putting a handkerchief in a drawer, "I was always afraid of bothering you." "Bothering me?" "Yes. I always thought that if I asked you to come, if I complained about the distance, it would make you feel guilty. And I didn't want that. I didn't want you to live with a guilty conscience because of me." Sarah stopped what she was doing and looked at her mother. "But I already lived with a guilty conscience, Mom. I just didn't let it surface." "It's different. It's one thing to feel guilty alone, in your own corner. It's another to have someone demanding from you. I never wanted to be a burden. You were never a burden. I know, but I was afraid of becoming one." Eleanor sat on the edge of the bed, tired. A lot of people get old and start demanding attention from their children, complaining, criticizing. I didn't want to be like that. I wanted you to remember me as someone who gave you wings, not as someone who held you back. The words were so pure, so devoid of any manipulation, that Sarah felt tears well up again. But this time, she didn't try to hide them. She let them run freely, cleansing something that had been dirty for too long. "You were always stronger than me," she said, her voice choked. "No, dear, I just learned to accept things. You're still learning." They spent the rest of the afternoon in quiet silence, just organizing, tidying, being there. When the daylight began to fade, Sarah helped her mother lie down for a nap before dinner. Before leaving the room, Eleanor called her. "Dear?" "Yes, Mom?" "Thank you." "For what?" "For coming back. For being here. For not giving up on me." Sarah felt her chest tighten. "I was the one who gave up, Mom. You never gave up on me." Eleanor smiled, that tired but loving smile, and closed her eyes. In the days that followed, Sarah began to make concrete changes in her life. She sold part of her company's shares, delegated responsibilities she once thought only she could fulfill, cancelled contracts that no longer made sense. Some partners were surprised, others disappointed, but she no longer cared. For the first time, she was making decisions based on what she felt, not on what seemed right in the eyes of the world. She thought about taking her mother home to live with her, but the doctors advised against it. Eleanor needed constant care, a structure that a typical residence wouldn't have, so Sarah made another decision. She moved to the city. She rented a small apartment, a few blocks from Maplewood Senior Care, and began to establish a new routine. In the morning, she went to the facility. In the afternoon, she returned home, worked a little on her laptop, handled urgent matters. In the evening, she returned to the facility, had dinner with her mother, and stayed there until she fell asleep. Only then would she go home. It was tiring. It was repetitive. But it was real. One night, while helping her mother brush her teeth, Eleanor looked at her through the bathroom mirror. "You're thinner." "I'm eating right, Mom." "But are you sleeping?" Sarah hesitated. The truth was, she slept little. She spent her nights awake, thinking about everything she had lost, about everything she could still recover. But she didn't want to worry her mother. "I am sleeping." Eleanor turned and looked firmly into Sarah's eyes. In that way only mothers know how to look, seeing through any lie. "You don't need to kill yourself with guilt, dear. You're here now. That's what matters." "But what about all the time I lost?" "Lost time is lost time. You can't get it back, but you can enjoy what you still have." Eleanor touched Sarah's face with her wet hand from brushing. "I'm happy you're here. I'm happy every day I wake up and know you'll appear. Don't throw that away worrying about yesterday." Sarah held her mother's hand and kissed it. She said nothing. She didn't need to. Some things are communicated without words, through gestures that carry decades of history. That night, alone in her apartment, Sarah finally slept a full night. Not because she stopped feeling guilty, but because she began to understand that guilt, however great, could not be greater than love. And that loving, sometimes, means forgiving yourself. It means accepting that you made mistakes, but that you can still do things differently. It means understanding that it's never too late, as long as there's still time. And time was exactly what she had now. She wouldn't know how much. No one does. But as long as there was time, she would be there, present, real, alive. And that finally began to feel sufficient. Chapter 6. Autumn arrived slowly, painting the garden trees with shades of rust and gold. Sarah watched the leaves fall from room 23's window, thinking about how everything changes without asking permission. Trees don't choose to lose their leaves, they just accept it. And perhaps that was what her mother had always tried to teach, to accept what cannot be changed, and to find peace in what remains. But some things could still be changed, or at least she believed that. Eleanor had been recovering well in recent weeks. She walked with more steadiness, ate better, even told more stories. There was a different light in her eyes, as if Sarah's presence had rekindled something that had been extinguished for a long time. The doctors were optimistic. Brenda said she had never seen Mrs. Vance so well. But then came that Tuesday. Sarah arrived at Maplewood Senior Care at her usual time, carrying the coffee and pastry her mother liked. She went up to the 3rd floor, whistling softly, thinking about how beautiful the day was outside. But upon entering the room, she realized something was different. Eleanor was in bed, pale, breathing with difficulty. Brenda was at her side, adjusting the oxygen, with a worried expression. "What happened?" Sarah's voice came out louder than she intended. "She got sick during the night," Brenda explained, without taking her eyes off Eleanor. "High fever, shortness of breath. We called the on-call doctor. He medicated her but asked the attending physician to come this morning." Sarah dropped the coffee on the floor. The cup shattered, spilling dark liquid across the floor, but she didn't even notice. She rushed to the side of the bed and took her mother's hand. It was too hot. "Mom, can you hear me?" Eleanor slowly opened her eyes, focusing with difficulty. When she recognized Sarah, she tried to smile, but it was just a weak movement of her lips. "Hi, dear," she whispered, her voice hoarse and tired. "Don't talk, Mom. Save your energy. The doctor will be here soon. No need to worry." "Of course I need to." Sarah held her mother's hand tightly, as if she could keep her there. "You're going to be okay. You're going to be okay." But the words sounded hollow, desperate. She knew, deep down she knew. The doctor arrived an hour later. He examined Eleanor carefully, asked questions she could barely answer, checked her vital signs. Sarah stood by, observing every movement, every expression on the doctor's face, trying to decipher what he wasn't saying. When he finished, he asked to speak with her in the hallway. "Is it serious?" Sarah asked before he could speak. The doctor sighed. He was a middle-aged man with tired but kind eyes, who probably had this conversation more often than he liked. "Your mother is 87 years old. Her body is tired. This respiratory infection, combined with her general frailty, is complicated. But it can be treated, right? Antibiotics, something. We'll try. But I need to be honest with you. At her age, with her history, the chances of a full recovery are small." Sarah felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. "How? Much time? That I cannot say. It could be days, it could be weeks. It depends on how her body responds to treatment." "Days?" Sarah's voice trembled. "Weeks? I'm sorry. I know that's not what you want to hear. So what do I do? Do I just stay here watching her die?" The doctor placed a hand on her shoulder, a professional but sincere gesture. "You do what you're already doing. You stay by her side. You give her comfort, presence. That's what matters most now." When he left, Sarah stood in the hallway, trying to process what she had heard. Days, weeks, how was it possible? A little while ago, her mother was fine. She was improving. How could everything change so quickly? She returned to the room with trembling legs. Eleanor had her eyes closed, her breathing still difficult, but calmer. Sarah sat in the chair and stayed there, just watching her chest rise and fall, watching the deep wrinkles on her face, watching the hands that were once strong and now were just skin and bone. It wasn't fair. She had just found her mother again. She had just learned to be present. She had just begun to fix what was broken. And now time was running out. "No," she whispered to herself. "Not like this. Not yet." The following days were an emotional roller coaster. There were moments when Eleanor seemed to improve, stayed awake, talked a little. There were others when she could barely open her eyes, lost somewhere between sleep and unconsciousness. Sarah no longer left Maplewood Senior Care. She slept in the chair beside the bed, waking at every change in her mother's breathing, at every low moan. Brenda tried to convince her to go home and rest, but she refused. "I've spent too much time away," she said, her voice firm. "I'm not leaving now." The nights were the worst. The silence of the facility, broken only by the distant sounds of doors closing and carts passing through the corridors, amplified every fear. Sarah stayed there, holding her mother's hand, praying to God she wasn't even sure she believed in. One of those nights, Eleanor woke up. The moon entered through the window, drawing silvery shadows on the walls. She turned her head slowly and found Sarah there, sitting in the chair with red eyes and a tired face. "You're here," Eleanor said, her voice weak but clear. "I'm always here, Mom. You should be sleeping." "I can't sleep." Eleanor squeezed Sarah's hand with surprising strength for someone so fragile. "Don't be like this, dear. Don't have that desperate look. How do you want me to be? Sarah's voice failed. "You're dying?" Eleanor completed the sentence Sarah couldn't. "Yes, I'm dying, but not now. Not yet." "Don't talk like that." "Why not? It's the truth. We spend our whole lives pretending we won't die, but everyone dies. It's just a matter of when." Eleanor looked at the ceiling, thoughtful. "I've lived longer than I expected. I watched you grow up, I watched you succeed, I watched you come back. I have nothing to complain about." "But I do." Sarah got up from the chair and sat on the edge of the bed, holding both her mother's hands now. "I have a lot to complain about. I wasted so much time we could have spent together. And now you're here. And that's what matters. Eleanor brought one of Sarah's hands to her own chest, pressing it against her heart that beat slowly but still beat. Feel that. As long as this beats, as long as I'm breathing, we have time. But what when it stops? When it stops, you'll go on living. You'll remember me. You'll carry a piece of me with you. And you'll live better because you learned, because you understood. Eleanor closed her eyes, tired. I won't be here forever, dear, but the love I have for you, that stays. That doesn't die. Sarah couldn't hold back anymore. She lay down beside her mother, careful not to hurt her, and embraced that fragile body that had once carried her, that had once protected her from everything. She cried in silence, feeling her mother's breath against her face, feeling the warmth that was still there. I love you, Mom, she whispered. I always loved you. Even when it seemed like I didn't, even when I was far away, I always loved you. I know, dear, I always knew. They stayed like that until dawn. Mother and daughter embraced as if time had gone back decades to when everything was simpler, when love didn't need justifications or excuses, when it was enough to be there together, and that was the whole world. When the daylight began to enter through the window, Eleanor was asleep again, her breathing still difficult but stable. Sarah carefully got up, adjusted the blanket, and stayed there, watching. She knew the next few days would be hard. She knew she could lose her mother at any moment. But she also knew that for the first time in a long time, she had done the right thing. She had come back. She had stayed. She had loved without fear. And if time was running out, at least she would be there until the last second. She wouldn't flee. She wouldn't hide. She would face the pain, because that's what you do for those you love. You stay. Even when it hurts, especially when it hurts. Outside, the sun continued to rise, indifferent to the human drama unfolding on the third floor of Maplewood Senior Care. The trees continued to lose their leaves, the world kept turning, but inside that room, time had another measure. It was measured in heartbeats, in breaths, in moments stolen from an end that was approaching but had not yet arrived. And as long as there was a heartbeat, a breath, a moment, Sarah would be there. Because true love doesn't abandon. It doesn't give up. It doesn't disappear. True love stays. Chapter 7. The week that followed was made of small miracles and great fears. Eleanor oscillated between moments of crystalline lucidity and others where she seemed to be elsewhere, talking to people only she saw, recalling stories from a past Sarah didn't know. In these moments, Sarah just listened, trying to understand who this woman was before she was a mother, before she was hers. She discovered things she never knew, that her mother wanted to be a teacher but had to stop studying in 5th grade to work, that she had a boyfriend before Sarah's father, a young man who died in a work accident, that she loved to sing but was ashamed of her own voice, that she dreamed of seeing the ocean but never had money for the trip. Each revelation was a window opening to an entire life that happened parallel to her own dreams and ambitions. Sarah realized that she had spent so much time focused on herself that she never stopped to think of her mother as a person, as someone who also had desires, frustrations, unfulfilled dreams. "Why did you never tell me these things?" she asked one afternoon while helping her mother drink water. "You never asked," Eleanor replied, with no hint of accusation, just stating a fact. "And I never offered either. I thought it wasn't important." Of course it was important. No, it wasn't. The important thing was always you, your life, your future. Mine was already lived. Eleanor looked out the window, where the leaves continued to fall. Mothers are like that. We live through our children, and it's all right. But it wasn't all right, and Sarah knew it. Her mother had nullified herself so much, put herself in the background so completely, that her own daughter never questioned it. She simply accepted that sacrifice as if it were natural, as if it were owed. Now, seeing her mother there, fragile and tired, she understood the weight of that immeasurable love. Love that gives everything and expects nothing. Love that extinguishes itself so that the other may shine. Love that in the end leaves only silence and absence. But it also leaves memories. And perhaps that was enough. On the 5th day after the worsening, Eleanor had a moment of significant improvement. She woke up more alert, asked to sit in the chair by the window, even wanted to comb her own hair. Sarah helped her with everything, feeling a cautious hope grow inside her chest. "Are you better, Mom?" "I am. I don't know for how long, but I am." They spent the morning talking about small things, the weather, the garden flowers, the taste of coffee. Nothing deep, nothing urgent, just the simple pleasure of being there together, alive. It was that day that Sarah made a decision. "Mom, when you leave here, we're going to travel." Eleanor laughed, a weak but genuine sound. "Travel? Where to?" "To the ocean. We're going to see the ocean together." Her mother's eyes filled with tears. "Dear, I can't travel anymore. I can barely leave this room." "Then we'll wait for you to get better. And when you do, we'll go. I promise." Eleanor held Sarah's hand and looked at her with a mix of love and sadness. "You know I'm not going to get better, right? Don't talk like that." "But it's true. We know. Both of us know." She squeezed Sarah's hand. "But thank you for wanting to take." "Thank you. Me. Just for you to want it, it's as if you've already taken me." That night, Sarah left Maplewood Senior Care for the first time in days. She needed a shower, a change of clothes to breathe different air. She walked through the city streets, observing people pass, each carrying their own worlds, their own invisible pains. She entered an old record store that stayed open late. She searched among dusty vinyl records until she found what she wanted. A compilation of old songs, the kind her mother used to hum when she was a child. She also bought a small, portable record player. The next day, she set everything up in the room. When her mother woke up, Sarah put the record on. The music filled the room, soft and nostalgic. Eleanor closed her eyes, and a smile appeared on her face. "That song," she whispered. "Do you remember it?" "I do. Your dad liked that song. We used to dance in the living room when you were a baby. You'd be in your playpen, clapping along." Sarah got up and extended her hand. "Dance with me, Mom?" "Dear, I can't." "You don't have to get up. Just give me your hand." Eleanor extended her hand, and Sarah held it, making gentle movements as if they were dancing. It was a symbolic gesture, almost absurd, but in that moment it was everything. The music continued, and the two stayed there, connected by that fragile hand, dancing without moving. When the music ended, Eleanor was crying, but they were tranquil tears from someone who had finally made peace with everything. "Thank you, dear, for this moment, for all the moments." "I should be thanking you, Mom, for everything, for giving me life, for raising me, for never giving up on me even when I gave up on you. You never gave up on me, you were just living. No, I did give up, but I'm here now, and I'll stay." The days continued to pass, but Eleanor's momentary improvement didn't last. Slowly, she began to sleep more, speak less, and gradually detach from the world. The doctors increased her morphine for comfort, and the room became a silent, almost sacred space. Sarah started reading to her mother, old stories, tales she herself liked as a child. She didn't know if Eleanor heard, but she kept reading anyway, because some things are not meant to be understood. They are meant to be felt. One night, sitting in the chair beside the bed, Sarah woke with the feeling that something had changed. She looked at her mother. Her breathing was slower, more spaced out. She got up and took Eleanor's hand. "Mom?" Eleanor slowly opened her eyes. She looked at Sarah with a clarity she hadn't had in days. "You're here." "I'm always here." "I know. I always knew you'd come back." Her mother smiled, a tired but complete smile. "You were always stubborn, my stubborn girl. I learned from the best." Eleanor tried to lift her hand, and Sarah helped her, bringing it to her own face. She felt her mother's cool palm against her cheek, a soft, definitive touch. "I forgive you, dear, for everything you think you did wrong. I forgive you, Mom. And you need to forgive yourself too. You need to live. You need to be happy, truly happy. Not that magazine happiness, that pretty photo happiness, but the happiness of waking up and being at peace." Eleanor took a deep breath with effort. "Promise me." "I promise. And you'll see the ocean. For me, you'll see the ocean, and you'll remember me, will you?" "I will. I promise I will." "Then it's good. It's all right." Eleanor closed her eyes again, but didn't let go of Sarah's hand. They stayed like that for hours, or perhaps minutes. Time had lost its meaning. Her mother's breathing grew slower and slower, softer and softer, until, at some point between night and dawn, it simply stopped. Sarah didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just stayed there, holding the hand that no longer had life, feeling the silence weigh in the room. There was a strange peace in that moment. As if after so much struggle, her mother had finally found rest. When Brenda entered the room in the morning, she found the two of them, her mother lying, serene, as if she were just sleeping. Sarah beside her, still holding her hand, her face wet with silent tears. "I'm so sorry," Brenda whispered. Sarah just nodded, unable to speak. The following days were a blur of arrangements, paperwork, phone calls. But Sarah did everything with a serenity that surprised even herself. It wasn't coldness, it was acceptance. Her mother had taught her that in her last moments, accept what cannot be changed. The funeral was simple, just as Eleanor would have wanted. Few people, sincere words, no pomp. Sarah spoke, but her words were few. She said her mother was the strongest person she had ever known, that she had learned more from her in the last few weeks than in her entire life. That true love doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to be true. When everyone had left and she was alone before the grave, she finally let everything out. She cried like she hadn't cried since childhood, without worrying about being seen, without worrying about being strong. She just felt everything, the pain, the regret, but also the gratitude for having returned, for having had those last few weeks, for having said goodbye. 3 months later, Sarah was at the beach. She had kept her promise. She had rented a house facing the ocean and spent an entire week there, just watching the waves, feeling the sand beneath her feet, listening to the sound of the water breaking on the rocks. She carried with her a small box with her mother's ashes. On the last day, at dawn, she walked to the water's edge and opened the box. The wind carried the ashes gently, mixing them with the sea foam, making them disappear into the infinite horizon. "You arrived, Mom," she whispered. "You finally reached the ocean." She stayed there for a long time, just looking. She thought about everything she had lived, about everything she had lost, about everything she had gained, and she understood that life wasn't about never making mistakes. It was about learning. It was about coming back. It was about being present while there was still time. She returned home changed, not better, not healed, but transformed. She continued working, but in a different way. Choosing projects that mattered, saying no when she needed to, saying yes to what was truly worthwhile. And every Tuesday, without fail, she visited Maplewood Senior Care, not her mother's room, which now housed someone else, but the other rooms. Mrs. Anderson, Mr. Davis, Mrs. Miller. She sat with them, talked, listened to their stories. She did what her mother would do. She gave presence. She gave attention. She gave love. because she had learned that this is the only kind of wealth that truly matters. Not the money in the bank, not the awards on the wall, but the time given, the presence offered, the love shared while it is still possible. On one of those Tuesdays, sitting beside Mrs. Anderson, she heard something that made her smile. "You're just like your mother, you know." "I am." "You are. She used to come here too, sit with me, talk. You have the same way about you, the same heart." Sarah felt her eyes sting, but didn't let the tears fall. Instead, she squeezed Mrs. Anderson's hand and thanked her. Because that was the greatest compliment anyone could give, not comparing her to her achievements, but comparing her to her mother. Leaving Maplewood Senior Care that day, she looked back one last time, the white building, the manicured gardens, the windows where so many lives waited. It was no longer a place of abandonment for her, it was a place of memory, a place where she had learned what truly mattered. And as she walked back home, feeling the afternoon sun on her face and the wind tousling her hair, she realized that her mother was still there. Not in the grave, not in the ashes scattered in the ocean, but within her. In the way she looked at the world, in the way she treated people, in the way she had finally learned to love. Some returns happened too late to change the past, but never too late to change the future. And this truth, painful and liberating at the same time, was the last gift her mother had left her. The legacy was not in things, it was in the lessons, in the small kindnesses, in the love that multiplies when shared. And that, in the end, was everything. If this story touched your heart, like, comment and subscribe. Stories like this deserve to be remembered.